So welcome to our first breakout session. Tori Bird and Lynne Baker from Utah's Hogle Zoo. They're going to present on understanding volunteer engagement in Jordan River ecological restoration.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So conservation volunteerism can take many forms, from community science, doing things like monitoring coral reefs, to ecological restoration, planting trees, or habitat restoration through cleanups and other plantings. Volunteers provide a much needed support for projects in conservation that, as we know, can have limited resources in both people and funds. While there's conservation work and therefore volunteer work, conservation work being done in all sorts of environments all around the world, the urban environment is a pretty unique and important one. Our urban environments are growing very rapidly, and we have less opportunities for people to connect to nature and provide those green spaces. And there's really good evidence that those green and blue spaces are very important to human health. Urban landscape restoration is a socio-ecological process that benefits both people and landscapes. The recreational and therapeutic uses of these spaces have been studied and are well established. So the importance of volunteerism to environmental restoration programs is, again, well established. But the effects of participation on volunteers are not always as well understood because they can vary widely based on location, the population of people volunteering, the activities they're taking part in, the management. So there's really a need for locally relevant and systematic evaluation of volunteer programs and the impact of those programs on volunteer participation, on volunteers. To date, research has shown that urban environmental volunteerism can positively impact volunteers by connecting them to nature, improving their well-being, creating greater concern about wildlife and conservation in general, and increasing knowledge of local environmental issues. Here in Utah, we have a wonderful site for this at the Jordan River. It is an ideal site to engage community in restoration. It was identified as an area of importance to our community in Salt Lake and one in need of some additional support. While it is a wonderful and beautiful place, it does also face some challenges, including those of bank destabilization, habitat loss, areas of low flow, and negative perceptions associated with unhoused populations and pollution. But very encouragingly, recent decades have seen increased appreciation and dedication to restoring this river to create a beneficial open space for our community. And the general public is really increasingly supportive of this work. So in 2018, the zoo started our Jordan River Restoration Program. We partner with the Jordan River Commission, who makes all of this work possible. And while we started with just a few events that first year, we have now grown to have 2 monthly events on a Saturday morning and a Wednesday evening. These include things like plantings, cleaning up the trash, both on the trail and from canoes, invasive species removal, monitoring the wildlife along the river, creation and maintenance of pollinator habitats, and more. And since the beginning of this program, we've been keeping track of metrics such as the number of people engaged, the hours contributed, plants planted, pounds of invasive species removed. And while all of these are really great and super important, we recognize that we are missing the human element. What was the effect of these events on the volunteers? So we set out this year to start to understand that. With this study, our objectives were to first characterize volunteers by socio-demographic background, understand their personal knowledge and concern for the Jordan River and conservation in general, determine their motivations for volunteering, document the tangible and intangible benefits that they reported experiencing as a result of their involvement, identify any negative aspects of the volunteer experience, and acquire actionable insight for overall program improvement. To do this, we launched in March of this year, and we now have results through October, so this is very preliminary. We're really early stages in this. But what we've done is we've surveyed our adult volunteers, those who are 18 and older, who participated in 12 restoration events on site at the river. We did this through pre and post event surveys online. These were a mix of open and closed ended questions, and we made these anonymous to get the most honest feedback we could. We asked that volunteers complete one pre-event survey for the season and then a post-event survey for every event they attended. In our pre-event survey, we asked our socio-demographic questions. We asked about motivations, their perceptions of the river, any prior experience with the program, or degree of concern regarding environmental issues, and prior volunteer engagement. In our post-event question, we asked for feedback on communication and organization of the event, if they learned any new skills or gained new knowledge, what benefits they experienced through this work, and likelihood of recommending to volunteer again, potential barriers to volunteering in the future, suggestions for improvement, and again, we asked about these perceptions of the Jordan River. During these 12 events, they had 7 activity types, and we had 225 volunteer participants. 207 of those were adults who were asked to complete our surveys. We had 56 pre-event surveys completed and 64 post-event surveys. And we did expect this post-event number to be higher than our pre-event because, again, we asked for 1 pre-event survey for the whole season and a post-event for every event. So who are our volunteers? They range from 18 to 77 with an average age of about 37 years old. They are overwhelmingly well-educated, with about 80% having some sort of a college degree. They are primarily female, with 55%, 38% male, and 7% non-binary or third gender. And they come from all over. We had 35 zip codes represented in our volunteer population. But primarily, we had these 6 zip codes that were most frequently reported. So we used those zip codes to get an idea of the relative affluence of the volunteers. We used the NANDA, the National Neighborhood Data Archive, which uses zip codes to assess affluence or in the neighborhoods. So we recognize that this is not an exact replication of our actual volunteers because we know that there are different incomes and things in different neighborhoods by zip code, but this is just their assessment by NANDA. So the relative affluent index of our volunteers ranged from 0.21 to 0.64 with an average of 0.4, which is a median family income of about $51,000 to $156,000 with an average of $103,000. So they're coming from relatively affluent areas. Then we were interested in their concern for the environment. Are they coming to us predisposed for this type of concern? We assessed this through rating scale questions from a 1 to a 7, rating their concern for global decline in biodiversity, climate change, and air pollution in the Salt Lake Valley. Through these 3 questions, they could get a max score of 21, meaning they're very, very concerned about the environment. And our volunteers came in at almost a 19, so they're quite high in their level of concern for environmental issues. Then we asked about their degree of engagement in volunteering. 55% said that they volunteer for a variety of organizations and activities, but over a third say that they mainly volunteer for environmental or conservation organizations and activities. And interestingly, while 34% said that they rarely or infrequently volunteer, 26% said that they actively volunteer in their community. So then we wanted to know, are we reaching new people? Are people coming back and we're getting the same group every time, or are we getting new people each of these events? We found that 39% were repeat volunteers, and of those, 46% had volunteered with us at least 5 times before. So that's 61% that are new people. We wanted to know what motivates these people to come and spend their Saturday mornings with me at the Jordan River. The number 1 reported benefit was spending time outdoors, very closely followed by a personal interest in conservation, which makes sense based on our understanding of their predisposition to concern for environmental issues, desire to make a positive impact, and then support a cause that I believe in. Something that we found interesting was that affiliation with the Jordan River Commission and Hogle Zoo were not strong motivators. And then also down at the lower end, we have learning new skills or gaining new knowledge and socializing with others. So how do these people feel about the Jordan River before and after these events? We assessed this by a 7-point Likert scale with these 8 questions, asking about if they feel like the Jordan River is a safe place, if it's an important natural resource, associations with trash and pollution, with unhoused people, if it's too degraded to support wildlife populations. So the maximum score on this would have been 48, which is like, I think the Jordan River is the best place in the world and it's being managed perfectly. It's great. In our questionnaire, with these 8 questions, our volunteers came in at a 24.8, so about midway. And interestingly, this was pulled down by 2 questions in particular. And those were associations with unhoused people and whether enough was being done to preserve the Jordan River. So like I said, we then asked some of these questions again in our post-event questionnaire. We didn't ask all of them. We asked 3 questions: whether they considered it a safe place, its potential as a recreation site, and problems with unhoused people. So from these 3, the maximum score was 18. And super excitingly to me, we have a statistically significant change towards positive perceptions post-event. So by engaging in these things, these events at the river, people are having a more positive association with the river. And again, this is very preliminary. We have a very small sample size, and we know that this might be influenced by the 3 questions that we selected, but this is also something that we have recognized anecdotally through our experience. So it was really great to have the statistics to back it up. What benefits do our volunteers report? This is the frequency they reported these benefits. The number 1 being spending time outdoors, followed by supporting their community, getting physical exercise, socializing with others, and learning new ways to restore urban rivers. Of these, the number 1, when they ranked them, was supporting my community. Then we wanted to know what would keep people from coming back. Unsurprisingly, at 55%, lack of time and scheduling conflicts. We're simply all very busy. Excitingly, 33% said none. I intend to come back again. Then we have things like physical limitations, lack of transportation, lack of things that interest them. But we did give them opportunities to say several other things, such as they had safety concerns, they didn't enjoy the event, they didn't feel connected to the river, and none of those were reported through any of these post-event surveys. So, what did we learn? Our volunteer characteristics were not unexpected. They tend to be well-educated, from more affluent neighborhoods, and have a strong pre-existing environmental identity. And this is not surprising. It is reflected through other literature on similar volunteer programs in different locations. The reasons that people volunteer. The motivations were diverse and largely evenly distributed. Concern for the environment is often reported as the number 1 motivator for conservation volunteerism. It's reported throughout other studies as well, and we found that often here. But what was an interesting thing was this slightly greater focus on the self that we found. People reporting their reasons for spending time outdoors. This is Utah. We're pretty well known for being outdoorsy. A personal interest in conservation, and to support a cause I believe in. So those personal motivators were more important to our volunteers. What impact is this having on volunteers? I found it interesting that the perceived benefits or outcomes oftentimes differed from their main motivators. While they were mostly motivated by the desire to be outdoors or support their community, the social interactions and gaining new skills or knowledge were more often reported as benefits. People saying things like, I really liked feeling like I was making a difference in my community and meeting other people who also valued the same thing as me. Or, I did not know that water from storm drains goes directly to the Jordan River. So while these things are not motivating people to go, they're not signing up because I want to learn something new, it's a benefit that they are gaining from this experience. And changing perceptions. It was really great to see that even these short-term engagements, these are 2 to 4 hour events at the river, can help shift perceptions and attitudes. That direct experience can incite change in environmental knowledge, attitudes, perceptions, and behavior. Again, this is supported by other literature as well. So then, what's next? Where do we go from here? We want to figure out how we can reach a more diverse audience. How can we fill in the gap on our maps? Where are we not getting people? And then how do we reach people who aren't already predisposed and have a high concern for environmental issues? We want to understand the factors that are promoting repeat volunteerism, that 39% that keep coming back and the 49% of those that have come back more than 5 times. Why? Why are they choosing to spend their Saturday mornings and Wednesday evenings at the Jordan River instead of doing literally anything else? So we can do this by focus groups and seeing if the experience that they're having that's getting them to come back is repeatable with other volunteers. The individual and community level impacts, the understanding the personal benefits and how that translates to the greater community. And this insight into the benefits of social networking and community building opportunities and how we can take that information and tailor our events to most provide those benefits to people. So we're not sending someone over on their own, a long ways away from everyone else to plant a tree, but we can create situations where they're interacting with the other volunteers and the coordinators. And finally, how do we take these 2 to 4 hour events and translate that into long-term behavior change so that people are making more sustainable, more environmentally friendly choices in their everyday life and not just taking these actions when they're here at the river with us. Saying things like this volunteer who said, I'm ready to sow seeds, plant native plants and trees, clean up trash, really whatever is needed. That taking of the enthusiasm they feel when they're at the river, at these events, and translating that into their life and making different choices. Thank you. Huge thanks to the Jordan River Commission who helps us coordinate all of the events and without whom this work would be so much more difficult, if not impossible. And particularly thank you to all of the volunteers who have come out and then also participated in this survey. I think I have lots of time for questions now.
Hi, we live along the Jordan River, so we spend a lot of time there. There are areas where they open up some gate or something and water comes maybe from another stream or something. One day I was walking by and all these water bottles and all this trash washed out of there. And I was like, why don't they like put a net across the river or something to catch that trash before it goes floating on by? And then highly collects by the canoe chute, if you know where that is, up by the south of North Temple, I think it is, and just collects there and swirls there and breaks down probably into microplastics and make more of a mess. So is there anything that can be done with that trash before it escapes and goes on?
There is one trash boom on the river. It is on the river right before it flows into Legacy Nature Preserve. So it prevents it from getting into the Great Salt Lake wetlands. That one trash boom does collect about 2 to 3 tons of trash every 3 months. Anyone want to guess what the number one item in there is? Water bottles. It's about 75% water bottles. So there is a trash boom. Why there aren't more, I think that varies by municipality and the feasibility of that. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm curious about how exactly you distribute the surveys. Are they in emails before? Are they on iPads directly to people? And how willing are they to take the survey?
We distribute them by email. So it goes out periodically, 10, 5, and 1 day before, and then the day of after the event, and then 5 and 10 days after. We have a pretty good response rate considering how willing people are to do online surveys. So I've been pretty impressed with the amount, but it does vary considerably by event and the audience.
Cool, thank you.
I may have missed this, but do most of your volunteers come from your participation at the Hogle Zoo or your mailing list at the Hogle Zoo? And I'm guessing that it's a unique opportunity to make a connection between a zoo on the east side and the Jordan River.
Yeah, A fair amount do come from information from the zoo. It goes out in like our member newsletter and things. But we are also finding that word of mouth is a very common way that people are hearing about this. The Jordan River Commission does a great job on their social media of promoting the events. So it does vary. But yes, we really do try to make that connection. We know that we're like up on the east side in the mountains. So making that connection at the zoo, that we're taking conservation action and that people can get engaged with us, not having to visit the zoo.
Hi, Tori. Thank you so much for everything you do for the Jordan River and everybody in this room who does work so hard to help the Jordan. I'm wondering, in your research and doing this kind of volunteer outreach and polling work, have you found anything about kind of comparing Utah to other states at all, and just like how volunteerism varies? Because I have this like personal theory that I don't know if it's substantiated or not, that just like there's something in our culture here that is more geared toward volunteerism than elsewhere. But I'm also not native to Utah, so I don't know.
That's not something that I have looked at in particular, comparing to other states. That would be an interesting thing to investigate.
Oh, thanks. I have a very unfun logistics and legal question.
Yeah.
About like liability and like when you get volunteers, what does that process look like? Do you have to do it? Does it kind of depend on the project? We could probably have a whole conversation about this, but and then do you have any attrition as soon as you're like, sign this form? People are like, no, thanks.
Oh, we definitely have attrition. People sign up for a volunteer event when they're very enthusiastic, and then the day comes and they're busy or tired or all sorts of things. One of the ways we've dealt with the attrition is we used to release all of the signups at once at the beginning of the year. We now do that quarterly because we found that someone would be really enthusiastic at the beginning of the year, sign up for every single event, and then come to like 2, and then I can't release those spots later in the year. So to the attrition, absolutely, and that has helped. With liability, all of our volunteers are considered zoo volunteers, so they are covered under the zoo's workman's comp.
Okay, do you have to do like background checks and things?
No, because they are not on site at the zoo. We just do a simple volunteer form.
Okay, lucky. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Hi, yes, very similar question. Where did you generate your forms for your release for the volunteers, and did the children sign by the parent?
Yes, we do ask that the children are signed up by their parent. And we're very fortunate to be a relatively large organization that has a great HR department who generates our forms. Our HR specialist has a background in law.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, have you noticed at all like generational influence if somebody grew up with their parents volunteering and if that impacted their decision to do so?
Don't have data about that. Anecdotally, I have had people tell me those sorts of things, and I really excitingly have several families that all come together. I have one family that, like, since she's pregnant and now she has a 6-year-old, and it's super fun, and they talk about they do this because their parents got them involved. So.
So my question, there was a relatively large fish kill that affected the Jordan River a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. Was your group involved in cleaning that up? And okay.
No, we were not.
Okay.
Fortunately, although typically when we do a float, there's always someone who like goes and grabs something. They're like, "Oh, that's an animal. That's a fish. Don't want to put that in my boat."
That's not a fun cleanup. So.
No.
Great presentation. I'm also interested in the collaboration between the zoo and the Jordan River Commission and sort of how that came about. And if you could speak to like what role you play versus the Jordan River Commission. I just think the combination of two entities coming together to support seems like a positive way to help reach a greater number of people. Thanks.
Yeah, so the impetus of this program was from a former zoo director who was interested in how we could engage our community and do more active restoration and conservation work in Utah. So they did a survey of zoo guests, and they found that about 65% either live within 10 miles of the Jordan River or cross it on their daily commute, so that are like already familiar with the river and the challenges it faces, which puts us several steps ahead in our conversations with them, instead of being like, hey, we work with lions in Mozambique, and they're like, I have no idea where Mozambique is. So we knew that the Jordan River was an area of importance to our community, and we recognized that it needed some restoration work. So we applied kind of the same principles that we apply to our international partners to looking to who to work with on this, because while the zoo is great at a lot of things, we can't do everything, and we certainly can't be subject matter experts on everything. So we were looking for that subject matter expert. We were looking for people that were working boots on the ground in the environment and with the community. And the Jordan River Commission is incredible. I don't know if you guys know that the Jordan River flows through like 19 municipalities. It's really hard to get people to work together. So the Jordan River Commission does a really great job of getting those municipalities to work together and coordinate and come to the table together, and has a really extensive knowledge of what's going on along the whole 52-mile river. So the Jordan River Commission they direct where they need work done. So when they say, we have 100 trees, we need to get in the ground, we'll find places to put them, will you get the volunteers? So we manage the volunteer signups and those liability things, and then we provide the staffing support at the events also. So they do a lot of the like direction of where work is needed, and then we go and we execute that work with them and our volunteers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious just in how you've described the Nanda tool and how that you found that the majority of your volunteers have been from more affluent areas. Have you then had more insight on generating ideas and stoke around how to get more local people involved? And I wonder too if the Jordan River Commission and the zoo have collaboratively thought of more ideas around this.
I think we're always trying to think of more ideas of how to reach diverse audiences, but I'm going to let Lynne Baker talk about NANDA.
So NANDA is just a archive, and it associates sociodemographic characteristics based on zip code. So if you're looking for any kind of data that you want to geographically assess in some way, so you can download the information freely from the NANDA website, which is, I think, housed at University of Michigan. So we just use that to associate, here are the 35 zip codes that our volunteers reside in, and then trying to see if there was, something that was, more frequent. We get volunteers primarily from here. So there was pretty widespread, but in terms of most of our volunteers coming from those 6 zip codes. So you can go online, and I can always share the link with you or something, but if you look it up, you'll find they have a wealth of information, and I think they just did the latest update to their data is from like 2022, using census information and all sorts of different variables. So there's a lot of information on the website. So if you're interested in looking at you want some geographic data, you can pull from that database. Yeah.
I guess I'm more just curious about how y'all have maybe.
This study is super preliminary, so we're just getting this information about where our volunteers are residing. So we're kind of in the early stages of strategically figuring out how to reach other communities. So I'll let you know next year. Oh, yeah.
Hi. I'm with the Jordan River Commission, so I can speak a little bit to some of our other partners that we have that we are trying to reach other communities. So we work a lot with Tracy Aviary, that is located as a nature center on the river, and through them and some other local community groups, like the Urban Indian Center, different things like that. We've been able to contact some more community groups, kind of focusing on things that already exist and making those relationships and taking those people out, and then they can bring more people to those things. And so I think that's something that we can expand through this specific volunteer project as well. So.
And then we're out of time. So another round of applause for Tori.